I know, says I gotta go, tired of going solo, but I'm never gonna go there again. This is what it is, this is who I am, this is where I finally take my stand. I didn't want to fall, but I don't have to crawl. I'm not the one with two-star hands, giving him the best of everything that's left of the life inside this man. I've been born again.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as always, we are born again. This is David and Eddie on a Saturday. At least we're going to pretend it's Saturday. It's actually Friday afternoon today. Anyway, hey, Dave, guess what?
Huh.
The Big 12 rules.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me how.
We beat the former, well, actually, it was the Southwest Conference and the Big 8. We beat the SEC last weekend.
Oh.
Yeah, Texas and OU got beat by the Big 12 last week.
Oh, yeah. So we've already shown them the door.
Yeah, we've already shown them the door.
Yeah.
Teach you. I know it's not going to go over well with our homegrown fans here, but hey, I'm sure they were happy that my Red Raiders beat the Longhorns, but it did not go so well with the Kansas State game here in Oklahoma.
No.
And actually, we play Kansas State tomorrow, so we'll see between those two who ends up being king
Is
of the
that
hill.
in Lubbock or going up to?
No, in Manhattan. That's in Manhattan. So, but anyway, it felt good for a weekend.
Yeah.
So we'll see how we're feeling tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hey, but other than that, yeah, it was a good sports weekend for us. Not so well in Austin or in Norman or in the state of Oklahoma, but at least the Big 12 can hang their head.
That's right.
The future Big 12 can hang their head. Raise their head, and the future SEC teams, not so much. But I'm sure both of them, well, let me put it this way. OU, I'm not worried about them. They'll be fine. Texas, I'm not so sure. I had a feeling they weren't as good as people wanted them to be. I think Sarkisian is not that good of a coach.
They start out with a bang and end with the whimper.
Yeah. I just don't think he's that good of a coach. And, well, he had those issues at USC. I don't know if you remember.
No.
He had some real issues. He got fired for being drunk on the field and during the game. And that just
setting a good example to the young men.
Yeah, and then he ended up being brought in at Alabama, getting a second chance, and he came back and proved himself a little bit. And I'm sure he's rehabilitated. I'm not saying that, but I just don't think he's that good of a coach. But we didn't come here to talk sports today, did we? We have a special guest, Dave. Do you want to introduce our special guest?
I'm excited that Southeast Tulsa has a fantastic candidate to bring back a conservative voice to the state capitol. We have Paul Hassink. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself and greet the folks watching today?
Well, hello. Thank you very much for having me. It's exciting to be part of this discussion today. Actually, Pamela and I, my wife and I, were out visiting with Republicans in our particular neighborhood, and we're knocking on doors for the Republican Party and trying to figure out who was there and where we could find support for the party. But at the same time, we were explaining that our incumbent wasn't very forthcoming in all the her voting record, to be very specific. And when people said, "Well, what do we do about that?" we started looking into what we could do about that. And while there were some folks running in the race, we didn't feel like they were going to be a very strong voice, and we didn't think they would actually contrast very well with the incumbent. So.
And I knew most of them, good folk. I mean, it wasn't that they're...
Right. Yeah. So I'm not in any way. And in fact, the whole race was very clean. But but at the end of the day, we felt like it was important to step up. And in my particular case, the situation is I had spent 40 years in the business, engineer to director at the power company.
Oh, so you come from the private sector.
Yes, sir. And was retired. So I was available, and it just didn't seem right for me to say, I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah. Now, one of your first supporters, longtime friend of mine, Dan Hicks.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, he ran 2 cycles ago.
That's right.
In fact, he probably is the reason we decided when we did. He said, "You're too late. You need to get in." And so he kind of nudged us along, and we were able to launch the campaign last year, and actually get a website up and get all that going, and then stepped into politics, which we had no idea what we were doing.
Sure.
But obviously we learned something, because in the primary, or three-way primary, we were able to win with 52% of the vote.
Wow, great. That's wonderful. So you didn't have to do a runoff. You just went straight out.
That's
away.
right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Let me ask you something, because I'm kind of concerned of what I'm seeing in Tulsa. I know, we had a hard time downtown. It's turned more blue, the center,
right,
Midtown, but it seems to be bleeding out farther and farther. And what I see is the younger and more conservative families are moving out into the suburbs more and more. Wasso, Broken Arrow, Bixby, even Jenks, although Jenks is kind of getting a little bit wishy-washy, but those other communities, Sand Springs, are fairly conservative, and we seem to be doing well there. But we're robbing the center of town, and it seems to be spreading further and further out to where Tulsa itself is becoming very, very liberal, and you're kind of at the edge of that.
Right.
And it's starting to kind of encroach upon your area. Do you still find that your area seems to be holding fairly strong still into a more conservative area, or?
Not particularly. No, it is predominantly Republican, but it has a huge independent component. So I think the phenomena you're referring to probably has a lot to do with the school district. Tulsa TPS, Tulsa Public Schools.
Yeah, you're almost completely in the Union District, right?
No. This district is predominantly in TPS.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so.
Do you have Memorial?
Correct. I live right there at Memorial, right?
Okay, so it is a little further east.
Yeah, it goes all the way up to Skelly. It's sort of the northern end.
Okay, I got you now.
And so in my experience, when I got here in '94 with the company, we purchased a house inside of TPS because we were going parochial. We knew we were going to go send our kids to Catholic schools, so it didn't matter what the school system was. And of course, the price of the houses were depressed as a result.
And the property taxes less.
Okay. And so all my colleagues were moving out to the district, and that sort of explains some of what you're talking about.
Right.
Anyone with young kids has to be very concerned about TPS right now.
Right.
Reading proficiency is in the dirt.
Oh, I know. This is why, honestly, I really admire you and those who are, in essence, standing and fighting. Dave knows my stance. I'm one of the people who, in a sense, wants people to stay in public schools and fight. Look at his face.
I'm about to
He's a homeschooler. He's a homeschooler. But I don't. We're not going to have that discussion today, okay, Dave? But no.
Oh, you get to dig, but I don't get to dig back.
No, I just wanted to make. No, I'm mentioning the fact that you and I disagree on that. But in the broader issue, it almost seems as though we're taking the salt not only out of the schools but out of the city.
Yeah.
And we're moving it to the suburbs, and eventually the city is going to be the suburbs. And if we keep doing this, eventually we're not going to have anything left. And at some point we have to stand and fight and take back the ground.
Yeah.
And Eddie and I are actually a lot in the same place, because we flipped one day. I was on Facebook and I mentioned, the issues I'm dealing with, because I live near 61st in Peoria. And Eddie right away says, "You need to get out of there." I said, "No, Eddie, I'm actually trying to clean it up." And then Eddie kind of recovered and said, "Well, good for you."
Yeah.
See? So.
Yeah, I took myself outside, smacked myself, and came back in and started all over.
And he lives way out there near Garnett.
I'm right at the fringe. I'm actually
backyard overlooks
Mingo.
The 18th green, right?
Yeah. I'm on the 18th green. I'm 91st in Mingo there, So. but but yeah, it's something that really troubles me, and I pray about it, and and not just in Tulsa, and I think the other thing that kind of worries me, it's not just, as you say, the independents, and even Democrats, but so many Republicans. We have so many Republicans that have strange ideas. I guess they used to call them the wine and cheese Republicans, or or a certain kind of. It's just a different type of Republican that sees things differently from the grassroots. No, you know what I think it is, and then we'll get back to I think what it is the new Republican is the old Democrat in a sense. So many, I think, the working class, how it used to be, the Republican was known as the rich guy. Exactly. Boy, you keep taking words out of my mouth. Exactly. The rich guy and the working class were the Democrats, and it's almost flipped.
Oh, it is entirely flipped.
Exactly.
My opponent is much better funded than I am.
Yeah. And so I think what's happened now, a lot of the old blue blood Republicans are now feeling more of an affinity towards the Democrat than they are to this new scallywag Republican Party that they're seeing, And so I think that's some of the thing that you may be facing as well. But anyway, Paul, so what do you see as the issues that are really facing us Tulsa inhabitants right now that you would like to see change?
So let me qualify that just a little bit. Okay.
Please.
So I've had a career of solving problems.
Wow. Okay.
And engineered, worked my
Yeah,
way up
great.
to a director. And so I dealt with problems that were very technical and sometimes just very process oriented, budgetary and all that. Mm-hmm. And so my skill set is solving problems. And for me to, at this point, try and say that I know what all the problems are I need to solve is less correct than saying whatever you give me, I will solve.
Well, that's humility, and that's an important thing when you're trying to be a candidate.
Yeah,
know that you don't know it all.
Exactly, and as an engineer, you learn that very quickly that you have to build a team, otherwise you can't solve the problem. And so it's very important to have the right resources applied to the right situation to come up with the right mix of knowledge and perspective. Perspective is huge because it's too easy to get fixated from a particular direction. And so there's a very obvious problem going on thanks to our federal government right now of the economy. But there are a lot of underpinning issues, and we already brought one up, the fact that our students right now, their reading proficiency is terrible, and so they're not
really. So education's a big issue.
Well, it's driving, it's going to drive future workforce, and it also drives our ability to actually talk about things, because if they're all they're doing is reacting to social media as opposed to thinking through the issues, because they can't read very well and they're just listening. It puts us huge
throwing
risk.
hissy fits because you didn't use the right pronouns, right?
Yeah, any number of ways. It's there's a lot of cases where people are just not on top of the issues.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
We'll continue on here. There's a phone ringing in the background, but we'll ignore it. Go ahead.
It's Donald Trump. Just ignore it.
So back to the issues. So economy is sort of the overarching issue right now, but there are a lot of pieces and parts. And part of it is trying to deal with crime. I mean, all of us are experiencing our cars being broken into in our neighborhoods. We know there's a shortage of policemen right now. We know there's a shortage of people willing to do the job.
I just want to say, I pulled up the map of the district, and it basically goes from near Holland Hall to the original Sam's Club, and then over just north of TCC Southwest, that big new campus. Isn't that what you've got? Yeah. Or did it change this time?
So we had redistricting.
Oh, see, I was giving old info.
Right. It used to go down to 81st, and now it's pulled up to 76th is the southern edge, and there are pieces even north of that are gone.
That's right. We had to move everybody in, didn't we? The suburban districts started taking more of Tulsa proper.
That would be a good way to describe it. And as a result, 79 moved up into Fulton.
Yeah.
And that's the northern edge. So if you can imagine the boundaries of Yale, 169, I-44, and 76th, that takes up the vast majority.
Wow. Yep.
And so
north.
The result is that the northern sections have been very interested in my message.
Good.
They love the common sense. They love the business experience. And they especially love the fact that I've never been in politics.
Yeah, and this is really, it's more working class people than, say, go over to 70 where you get a lot of the Brookside Mansion folks.
Yes, no, it definitely is not a mansion area.
Right.
Across the board.
So these are people raising families. These are not trust fund babies by and large. These are people with real world issues, the
Very
workplace,
much so.
Education for their kids, and then their neighborhood, safety, and a number of things. Gotcha.
So, all the basics.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the place where we need to have the attention. How you solve that is you figure out what the root causes are. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that has become very obvious in talking at doors is when I reach teachers, the message is absolutely clear that they don't get to teach. Yeah. They are spending all their time doing things that are outside of the vocation that they have.
Yeah.
They're having to feed kids. They're having to read scripts in cases. In some places, they won't be allowed to teach what they from their own skill sets and their own material. They have to deal with disciplinary issues all the time. Yeah, large classrooms, so that they just can't spend the time with the kids.
Yeah.
And so,
but let me just tell you, classroom size. Because we've lost discipline, we've therefore had to drop our classroom sizes so it was less disruption, right? Because we're baby boomers. I never had a class through elementary and junior high that wasn't less than 30 kids. Mm-hmm. That's unheard of now.
Today.
It is.
Yeah. But we had discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were so afraid the teacher might tell our parents because then we were really going to get it.
Yep.
Now the parent doesn't even hardly want to tell, or the teacher doesn't want to tell the parent because the parent will take the kid's side most of the time.
So I had an interesting experience. So one of the guys at church is a teacher, and I was asking him about this problem, and he said it's kind of counterintuitive. So one of the things they were dealing with in discipline is they had some that were just incorrigible. They couldn't deal with them one way or another. And so they finally just sent them home and said, "You're out. You're gone, guy." And that started working because the parents said, "Oh no, I'm stuck with this horrific kid. And if I don't clean him up, then," and so the principal who had experienced this and figured this out was able to take something that seems non-intuitive and actually make it work. Yeah. And the basic message was, if we can push education back to the principals and the school itself, we clean up so much. It's all these top-down people who think they know what's best for everybody and try to do one size fits all. As an engineer, I learned a long time ago, you don't treat everything the same way. No. You'll break the thing.
Well, a mutual friend of ours, Steve Kunzweiler, the DA, called me one Saturday morning a month ago and said, I'm trying to help Paul. Paul's asking some honest questions. And, Dave, would you help do a little consulting on some mental health things, which we did. That told me right away I was dealing with somebody who wasn't going to the Capitol because he knew it all, but somebody that started out saying, okay, I need to find out what are the real issues here.
That's right.
And if you're doing it on mental health issues, you're probably doing other things. Maybe it's the engineer in you that says, you know what, we can't afford to screw this up. We got to do it right.
One thing, though, that I always see as a dilemma is, you're going to the state capitol.
Right.
And you come from Tulsa and the Tulsa issues and everything. And it's almost like you end up at the State House and you get trapped in that jungle of all the state issues. And you spend all your time with people up there arguing about things like rest stops, the restaurants at the roadside, rest stop, and what's happening here, and the governor this, and the this, and the this, and this, and it's almost like people leave their town and they don't have time to actually focus back on their local communities. And it's a shame, because you're going there with the total sole focus of, I want to see what I can do for my community, my district.
You're the representative of your district.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're just a small representation of what happens going to Washington. You think of our Congress people, our representatives representing our House district, and then they get to Washington and they're sitting there worried about Nancy Pelosi's husband investing in stock trades and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like something went wrong somewhere along the way, that we are no longer able to focus on the things that it's almost like everyone should have a certain amount of time carved out that they can bring their district issues before, and everybody has to sit there and shut up. It's like in school. I mean, almost like in school. No, I'm sorry, Johnny, it's Dave's day. Dave, we're going to listen to Dave today. Dave, you're going to present your report. You're going to tell us what happened in your life. And then we listen to Dave, and then Dave gets his report. So, and then we're going to figure out what we're going to do with Dave's community and Paul's community and Eddie's community and so on and so, until we're able to, and then we might find out that Dave, Paul, and Eddie have similar situations in our each other's community.
Oh, yeah.
Because I guarantee you the things that are happening in your district aren't so unique to your district in education as what's happening here, and here.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to look at it from 50,000 feet or something and try to do a one thing fixes all from up here, I think it's a lot harder to see that sometimes.
So 40 years in bureaucracy, right? Electric utility, it's just a big bureaucratic company. While it's investor owned, it's regulated. Well, at least my part has always been regulated, which is the wire side. And so I've seen how that works. And most of what you have to do to get to that point is behind the scenes, where you're developing relationships, for one thing, so people trust you, but then you're having those conversations to find those common elements, and then you're moving everyone's thoughts in a direction where they're starting to harmonize, and then you can make things happen. So one things I think I will be able to do, particularly is with that much experience in one industry, and particularly around things like the freeze we had and the lack of power, particularly in Texas. Oklahoma wasn't quite so bad, but I can tell you exactly why that happened. I lived through it. I was actually there when all that was built, and I was pushing against much of what happened in Texas, obviously without success. But the trick is that I have a fairly unique set of skills that have some real value. And so there's going to be a lot of people that want to learn that from me. And then in turn, that builds a relationship. And it says, okay, I've helped you. Now we're going to talk about your issue, and we're going to talk about how my constituents can work through your issue to move forward. So having something to offer where I have some meaningful expertise that are very rare, and in turn, using that as a mechanism to build those relationships, and then to take those issues that represent my district and work them back through those same people. Yeah. Because at that point, we have an understanding on how we can move forward.
Yeah. Some of the issues I've advocated for at the Capitol, I have found a lot of support in the Democrat caucus for. Now, what does that say about me? But there were some things. And I went to meet a woman who won a Senate district in a special election, replaced Dan Newberry, and Allison Ikley Freeman. And I congratulated her. It's big of me, right, Eddie? You know? And I said, well, one of the things I want to say is don't presume who your allies will be and who your enemies will be here. You will find allies on the Republican side you might not be aware of. And she's looking at me sarcastically. Now, she and I had a lot of mutual friends, especially on mental health advocacy. And this woman is a mental health professional herself. She said, really? Like what? I said, well, you're support the medical marijuana initiative, right? And she said, yeah. I said, well, so does Nathan Dahm. And I said, I think you'll find there's a number of things you, Nathan Dahm, would agree on. She says, that right-wing religious nut, there is no way I could ever see myself in agreement with him, you know? And so I watched. Now, she got appointed to the Senate Health Committee. And the first week of committee meetings, Nathan Dahm brought 2 bills. She voted for both of them. And I'm watching this online at home, and I send her a text. I said, see, I told you could agree with him. And I watched, because I'm, the camera view showing, she's picking up her phone, looking at it, and she comes back. She says, there's probably something wrong with this bill, but I couldn't vote against it. So I'm saying that to say, there are a number of things where the creative person can get something done if they don't pigeonhole everybody at the Capitol.
That's right.
Because there are some unique solutions.
Whatever it is she thought might be wrong with it, if she had already built the relationship with Nathan and had those conversations, it'd already be fixed. And
yes.
she would not have to just vote for it. She would actually be in a position to make it better.
Yeah.
It's
and
silly.
She actually became part of the solution for some problems that Nathan was working on.
Yeah.
So let's get to your opponent.
Okay.
What do you offer contrary to your opponent? In other words, what issues do you guys differ on?
Well, so the very starting point is voting. So if you look at her vote on any of the protections the majority was trying to move through the House, it was either 90, I don't remember exact numbers, but something like 90% were no's and a few of them not voted, but consistently voting against Republicans. So,
especially in education, especially on CRT.
Yes, definitely on that one.
Just for those who may not know, let's bring it down to CRT.
Yeah, and honestly,
critical race theory.
Yes,
okay,
but even there, I want to avoid really using a label like that. It never used the word CRT. It was
it described it, pretty much nailed it, because
but the intent is to say you shouldn't discriminate at all.
Right.
And every individual is a unique individual, and everybody deserves respect and dignity. And
there it is.
Okay,
yeah,
and
spoke
so
to the heart of it.
So I did talk to one gentleman and said the way it was written was problematic, but not the theme of it. And this was a Democrat that I accidentally ran into while knocking on doors. And so there may be issues in that particular bill, but it wasn't the theme of the bill that was the issue. Yet every time we put a label like CRT on it, it starts to push into a corner, and then you have that problem.
Yes, you do. Now, Jay Stiegel wrote that, I believe. And, I'm sorry.
No, I was just...
don't go to the weeds.
Let's not go in. Let's just stay on the...
But it is important what you're saying about address the issue and don't get caught up and pigeonhole with labels.
That's right.
Labels divide.
So first issue, she doesn't vote the right way.
Yeah.
The second issue that we're so frustrated with is that when she goes to communicate where she's at on things, she always tells about all the positive things and never brings up any of the other options, the no votes she has. And I have no doubt there. In fact, I can tell you a few of the positive things she voted on, but there's so many negatives that she's hiding. And I'm sorry, it's accusatory to call it hiding, but when your letter comes out every 6 months or so and it doesn't have a single negative in there, or if there is, it's hidden where I didn't catch on to it, that's just not being upfront. It's not being accountable to your constituents. You should always say, I voted yes for this reason, I voted no for that reason, and across the board. It's just, if we have a representative that's not accountable, I don't care what party you're in, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And so, I've I've had to be accountable in business. Otherwise, I would have failed. I would have, I would not have gotten to director. And so as a trained professional, I can't play that game. I'm going to be upfront with y'all, and you might not like what I decide, but you're going to know why, and we'll move forward. And that has always worked in business. When people understand your rationale, they start asking questions. When they start asking questions, it opens the dialogue. You can see the positive aspects along with some of the negatives, but then you're saying, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought, and life goes on. So that's the fundamental issue. Is one of the most obvious things that just kind of digs at me is the fact that her sign in the yards does not say Democrat.
Yeah.
Now, mine has big Republican on there, and I'm proud of being a Republican. The values of the Republican Party are worth standing up for.
Sure.
But why wouldn't she put Democrat and say, I'm a proud Democrat?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Well, in Oklahoma, in essence, it's been a dirty word. If you look at the national
shouldn't be
part, I understand.
I mean,
a lot of things shouldn't be, but but it is. In fact, that's something we might get to later. And one of the things that has really hurt us in Tulsa in the local elections in politics is when we went to the nonpartisan elections. Yeah. The fact that you're not allowed to mention are you Republican or Democrat is just then
it becomes a popularity contest, and you don't actually know who's there
exactly, or what they stand for, or who's behind it, and this and this. Right, exactly.
Yeah, you should be able to speak to your values.
They were warned, right? They were warned, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and they did it anyway. And the reason they were warned is because they had seen it affect every state, every city that has gone to nonpartisan elections. The same thing has happened. They have not had a Republican elected in decades. So it's
by design.
By design, exactly.
Yeah, which is deceptive.
It is.
It is really deceptive.
Right. So what do you think, in your opinion, are, say, the top three priorities that you would like to focus on when you get to Oklahoma City?
Learn. You'd asked something like that earlier, and right. So I was going into the fact that I needed to learn what's going on first, and so clearly something like infrastructure is right up my alley, and that affects economy. So I should be able to do things there just right as I walk in, and so that'd be only a priority in the fact that I can do that very efficiently and get a lot of things done. But I mean, right behind that is a lot of other issues I need to do the homework on. Mental health was a big one that you and I discussed. Education is huge, and I'm talking to everybody about that. I'm going to school board meetings. I'm doing the kind of things you need to do to learn more about that.
Yeah.
And of course, security. So I've spent quite a bit of time talking to the policemen and both the sheriff and the policeman, trying to understand what their issues are.
Yeah, I think Kunzweiler liked that about you. You've taken some interest in what his role is as a DA, because he needs a legislative liaison.
Yeah, and it's actually a lot of fun. I really love learning. I've always that's my nature.
Keeps you young, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And so having a lot more ground to cover was something I actually missed when I retired. I suddenly didn't have that kind of interaction, and while I was able to do some valuable things, it was I just missed all that interaction with so many people and having all those deep discussions. And this has turned that right back on, and it's a real joy. I'm having a great time.
How is fundraising going? Are you
not bad? Now, I'm not the incumbent, so
right.
And so there's a very large bias to not go against the incumbent, because incumbents win, and therefore if you went against the incumbent and they win, then you have a problem. But I've gotten a lot of grassroots support. So I had been collecting donations at a grassroots level since I started in December. And then here, just in the last week, we had a fundraiser where Speaker McCall came in and personally contributed to my campaign, as well as some other significant donors. But the vast majority of those dollars were grassroots, much smaller denominations. And the thing that was just so exciting, so I've never done any of this before. I had no idea how it would turn out, whether it'd be a lot of people, little people. We had a meaningful size room, and Speaker and I were, along with Mike Mazie, who's one of my hosts, were up in the front. And by the time the speaker was done, the room was crowding up on us with people. So that was pretty cool to see all this. But when you looked across the room, there was probably easily a dozen different connections that were not just Republican, not just community. Sure. It was just all over, and just a broad spectrum of folks there. And that was the most exciting thing. This is the fact that whatever I've done to this day has somehow brought in that kind of broad support across not only Republicans. There were multiple independents, and there probably maybe a Democrat or two in there that I wasn't aware of. But
sure.
Speaking of Mike Mazie, that reminds me. Were you at that meeting last Friday for Congressman Nelms?
Texas.
From Texas?
Texas, yes.
You were at that?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, yeah, over at the Methodist?
Yeah, well, it's not Methodist anymore. Asbury.
Oh, I'm sorry. Asbury.
At least not for now.
Okay, I thought I'd seen you somewhere
Freestyle
before.
Methodist, maybe. How about that?
Okay. That's where I saw, okay, because I was there as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's one of more of those kind of cool things is you start connecting people to multiple events,
right?
And you just tie it all together. So, I wouldn't have picked you out of the audience, but now
well,
I won't have any problem.
I was the only, there were one of two black people in the whole audience.
Well, so that's easy to say because I didn't look at the color.
Well, there you go. Look at you.
Well, and I want to say, in the way of my own endorsement, because I do endorse and support you, is that here's a fella that some of the most reliable voices in Oklahoma conservatism have gotten behind you. And that speaks volumes. Maybe you don't have all the bigwig donors. Maybe you haven't sold your soul yet to anybody. And God help you if you do, because then I'll come after you. Yeah. But
I've got a piece of paper over here.
So anyway, that's the thing to me is I think what we're getting is solid, no-nonsense, conservative solutions in your candidacy.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, that's my goal.
Yeah, it's time that we get some new blood, some fresh blood, and some sincere blood with education and expertise behind it. I've been following, and I know a lot of people at the State House, and too many of them in the past, and I fear even now, are there to collect a check. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly.
They're then look for their golden hammock when their 12 years is done, right?
Well, I don't even think they need 12 years.
Oh, some of them look real quick.
I think it's only 2 terms, isn't it? And you get it.
The Senate has 2 terms is 8 years for them.
Right, but I mean, I think even I'm not positive on that.
Yeah,
I thought it was just 2 even in the State House.
I've seen people exit after a couple of terms because they got something lined up.
Yeah, so it's but it's kind of sad that you're going for just another job where you work. They'll do their 3 months. Yeah. And it's not shouldn't be 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot more than that this year, but
but it should be 12. I mean, you should be thinking about it and working even in the off months, looking at in your local community and being involved in doing things. But too many people, I'll take this time and now I'll go up there and figure it out when I get there. I think too many people see it that way and want to go collect a check, and it's not just it's just our nation as a whole. Mm-hmm. Mankind probably as a whole has gotten lazy and started looking for the least I can do to get the most.
Yeah,
but recognize there's a huge hurdle. I mean, this one's going to cost $100,000 in this race.
Ouch.
And the salary is half of that. And so how can anyone who isn't comfortable, because of a career, how is a young family ever going to support that kind of cost to get into office, much less the time it takes? I am doing this full time. I've a couple of folks that I'm running side by side with.
Yeah.
And they got kids. I don't know how they're managing it.
It's tough. Yeah.
And a job, too.
But then you had all of those people running unopposed. Remember, they found those empty seats.
There are some of those,
I
In
mean,
fact,
but wasn't there a record number this year, I think?
A couple years ago, out of the 100 races, 101 that were up for a new term, 42 were brand new, newly elected. That was just two cycles ago.
Wow.
So sometimes, and then term limits has really enhanced that. The other thing, whoa, a limpy mic here.
We need a screwdriver.
The other thing I say, and I'm going to brag about Scott Fettgatter, a state rep whose district's down there in Okmulgee now. He does constituent services better than anyone I know. I've called him when I've had issues with a state agency. And that's something people don't realize, that even when you come home, or even if middle of August, you're going to have people saying, hey, I've got a problem with the employment services, or I've got a problem with the healthcare authority or foster care or whatever.
Yeah.
And those issues, and boy, you don't do constituent services right, you will be one term, especially the veterans issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a big job. And if you're going to do it right, I think a person in your situation that's in, good health and good energy, and you're not Joe Biden, you've got some mental capacity, but you're retired.
Right.
And you're not raising a house full of kids right now.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is the right thing.
And you have, you've got a vision, you've got a motive, and you're focused on what you want to do. You see a need.
And you're not happy with how you're being served right now.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Well, listen, it was very nice getting to meet you and know you and our audience. Is there anything you'd like to
tell us how to get in touch with you.
Tell our people, and if you'll speak to the camera there and
Sure.
let people know, and if they can, how they can give to your campaign in these this last month here.
Yeah, down to a month. It's a race to the finish, and
39 days right now.
It's a lot of doors from here. Well, it's been a lot of doors the whole way. But so the website is my last name, Hassink. This is Hassink, and then OK for Oklahoma.com. HassinkOK.com. So there you can learn all about me. I have lots of material, a lot of resources up there. This interview today will go up on my resources page under the news tab, so everyone can listen to it that way. But there is a donation button clearly up in the top right corner that you can use. And there's two ways to donate. You can do it online with a credit card, or you can send me a check and it'll tell you where to send the check. So that would be greatly appreciated, because like we said earlier, it takes a lot of money to do this. And while we're going to do it one way or the other, we're not going to let this message die. We definitely could use the help.
Have you got some yard signs?
Tons of yard signs.
Can they pick them up down at the Republican headquarters?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So let me qualify it. They used them all up.
Yes.
So that was a wonderful thing.
That's a good problem to have.
I had at least a dozen, maybe 20 there, and I found out last night late that they're all gone. So I will drop them off when they're open in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Restocking. So go get yours while they still have them in stock, starting early next week.
Tomorrow morning I'll drop them off.
If they're open. It's a Saturday. Yeah. That's right.
Thank you. That's right.
That's how campaigns are.
They're all run together.
It's the Sabbath.
Yeah. All right. So, and then if you live in that district, if he hasn't been to your neighborhood, he's going to try his best to get to you. Right?
Yeah. For instance, today I got an email about lunchtime from a gentleman just near here, and he said, here's some recommendations. I went straight to his house on the way here and had that conversation. Now he has a big sign in his yard.
I think you got that vote. I think you got that vote.
But just to point out that, it's not that hard to connect with your candidate. You can do it on the website, and there's an email address and a phone number. It all works.
All right. Now, voting is going to be available for those in your district. They can go down to Hardesty the week before, to Hardesty Library, and vote on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday morning.
Okay.
Or they can go downtown if
downtown
they work
is
down
the one
there.
I'm familiar with, right?
Yeah. Or show up on, November 8th.
Correct.
It's Tuesday.
And absentee may not be completely closed, but bottom line is if you go to my website and you go into resources, you go to iVoter Guide, you can see how I vote, but the very front end of iVoter Guide, when you pick Oklahoma, it tells you all those dates.
Gotcha. There you go, folks. It is Hassink, Hassink, OK for Oklahoma, .com. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm FBI Special Agent Hetfield. We recently raided founder and CEO of MyPillow, Mike Lindell. We expected to find evidence of election tampering, fraud, support for Trump, which, as you know, is highly illegal. We didn't find any of that, though. What we did find was a good night's sleep. I gotta say, politics aside, these pillows that we confiscated from Mike Lindell are the most comfortable, nicest pillows that I've ever slept on. I mean, all the guys in the office can't stop talking about how comfortable and soft they really are. Before we raided Mike Lindell as a political stunt, I was using a competitor's pillow, and I just couldn't get a wink. It was not a good pillow.
I can't sleep. How can I sleep knowing I'm just a political arm of the Biden administration?
But now, after a long day raiding Biden's political opponents, investigating concerned parents at school board meetings, and egging on disturbed young men to commit acts of terror, I can finally catch a few Z's with MyPillow's patented adjustable fill stay cool technology and fluffy design that will not go flat, no matter how many Trump supporters I beat with it.
Where were you on January 6th? Scum! You want me to do it again? I'll hit you again! Is that what you want? Go ahead! It's so comfortable.
MyPillow, the official pillow of the FBI. When you can't sleep at night because your conscience is bothering you from all the raids on American citizens you're carrying out each and every day, make it a MyPillow. Order yours today and save with promo code B1. That's BEE and the number 1.